Now, Jim and Reagan, they're concerned with three major areas: accidental injuries, final expenses, and paycheck protection. The first area they're concerned with is when you're injured in any type of accident. Jim and Reagan, have either of you thought about what you would do if you're injured in an accident? Well, the Labor Advisory Board and American Income have given it a lot of thought. Their concern isn't that your medical bills won't be taken care of. You have health insurance to take care of that. When it's job related, then workers' compensation is there, and a lot of members have some form of disability. What they are concerned with is lost wages and other expenses that start adding up. Jim, when you end up in the hospital, even though your medical bills are taken care of, no one's paying you to be there, right? And Reagan, when you get that phone call, you obviously won't be working either, will you? You'll be by his side and vice versa, right? And God forbid something happens to any of your children. In that case, no one is working, right? Jim, when you, Reagan, or any of the kids get hurt and have to go to the emergency room, they're going to send you up to $150 just for taking the time to get the injury looked at. That's for any type of accident, whether you scrape your knee, need stitches, on or off the job. That money comes to you here at home. The only exception to that is when you have to stay overnight at the hospital. Then they're going to send you $300 a day for up to a full year. That ends up being $2,100 a week. Now, let me ask you, when that money comes in, will that help your family? Yeah, of course it will. Now, the only exception to that is when you have to stay in intensive care. They're going to send you $600 a day for up to 2 full weeks. The reason why it's $4,200 a week is because usually when you are in the intensive care unit, it's a life or death situation. Does that make sense? Now, the second area that they're concerned with was your final expenses. Now, Jim, who's going to be responsible for taking care of your funeral and final expenses when something happens to you? Now, let me ask you, have either of you ever had to plan a funeral? The reason that I asked is that it is a very serious problem. Now, the concern is not the fact that you're going to die, because we all will, right? But when we die, someone in our family has to face a funeral director immediately. Funeral directors these days require all or the bulk of the money up front on the spot before they start doing anything, or at least they want to know where the money is going to come from. Did you realize that? A lot of people don't. So while your family is waiting for life insurance to come in, who has to take care of things in the meantime? It's like the family or you, Reagan. They either have to take the money out of savings if they have it, or worse yet, borrow it. Does that make sense? So now what they've done is set up the Freedom of Choice certificate to take care of your final expenses. If you qualify, each of you will receive your own certificate that looks just like this. Now, they call it the Freedom of Choice because it's good at any funeral home. The way that it works is that when something happens to you, Jim, and Reagan takes the certificate to any funeral home that she chooses, and when the funeral director looks at her and says, "I'm really sorry for your loss," Jim's funeral is going to be $15,000. How would you like to take care of that today? At that point, you say, Jim has the freedom of choice. Everything is taken care of from that point on. Jim, in your case, they've set aside $20,000. Reagan, in your case, they've also set aside $20,000 to take care of your funeral and final expenses. What's not used at the funeral home gets sent to the beneficiary. Now, let me ask you, Jim and Reagan, isn't it nice to finally have this taken care of for your family? Exactly. Each of the kids are covered for a $10,000 benefit that can be converted to $50,000 at age 21, regardless of their health or habits. That way they can keep it for the rest of their life. So pretty nice, huh? Now, the only exception to this, when you die before the age of 65, will typically be in some kind of accident, right? Jim, when something happens to you in any type of accident, not only will they immediately take care of your final expenses, but they're going to send your family an additional $230,000 to help out during that time. When we die in an accident, what kind of accident will it probably be? That's right, a car accident. In that case, they're going to send you an additional $260,000 plus take care of all final expenses. And when traveling on a common carrier, like a bus, plane, or train, they will send an additional $350,000 to the family. Each of your children are also covered for 20% of the total amount. Does all of that make sense? Third problem that they're concerned with is your paycheck. Jim, you're on your way home from work and you get killed in a car accident or pass away from a stroke or a heart attack. Is your paycheck going to keep coming in to support Reagan and the family? Of course not. Your paycheck vanishes just like that. Taking care of the family, putting food on the table, paying the bills, all those pretty much stay the same. So Reagan, the bills keep coming in month after month. Jim's paycheck is gone, right? Let me ask you, you have life insurance, right? Hopefully around $500,000 or so. Your union realizes that all members do have life insurance, but here's what happens in a typical situation. When you die, your family immediately has to start dipping into those lump sums. First, for reimbursement of your burial and miscellaneous expenses, and then because your paychecks have stopped coming in, you have to keep dipping into your savings to pay bills and put food on the table. And then a year or two later, what happens to all that money? That's right, it has completely disappeared and is gone. So here is your paycheck protection or readjustment income. Jim, when something happens to you, they're going to start sending Reagan a paycheck the very next month and every single month after that for a minimum of 1 full year. Now, the reason they chose at least a year is because you need a decent time to adjust. A couple of months just isn't enough time. Does that make sense? What they're going to do in your case, Jim, is when you die, they're going to start sending Reagan $3,000 every single month for 2 years for any cause of death. Reagan, when something happens to Jim and they send you and your family that check every month, will that give your family time to adjust? Of course it will. Now, Reagan, you'll be in a position that when something does happen, you take that money you receive and get it invested for your future, children's education and retirement. Does that make sense? And Reagan, when something happens to you, Jim will receive $3,000 a month for 2 years. Now, this does build an emergency fund. After 3 years, if things ever get tight financially, there will be some money to help take care of your program during that time so you don't lose it. There are also paid up benefits, so when you retire, you can stop contributing to the program and keep a reduced paid up final expense benefit for the rest of your life. Pretty nice, huh? Have you guys ever thought about what you would do if you were to be diagnosed with a terminal illness? Well, they put a lot of thought into it. In fact, they realize you're going to need a lot of money. When you're diagnosed with a terminal illness and not expected to live more than a year, they're going to send you half the final expense and paycheck protection. The other half will come to your family after you are gone. There's a strike and layoff clause so that you can't lose your program. In fact, if a union strike, they will take care of your insurance benefits for up to a year, and you never have to pay it back. Jim, even if you can't work just 1 day because of a strike, they will take care of your benefits not only for a week, which is $35, but for the whole month, which is $160. And on layoffs, as long as you've been working for the past 12 months, they will take care of your program for up to 3 months, and you never have to pay it back. Pretty nice, huh? Also, the insurance benefits are guaranteed and non-cancelable, which means that if you qualify, then no matter what happens in the future to your health, age, or habits, no one can ever take this away from you. Does that make sense?